Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 48, Beating Them at Their Own Game. Li Jianheng was having a nightmare. In his dreams, he was back at the Nanling hunting grounds on that stormy night where branches whipped viciously at his face as he dodged frantically, shielding his head with his arms. The horse he was riding on galloped wildly onwards. Terrified, Li Jianheng tried to grab onto his reins, but Xiao Qiye suddenly turned around and grabbed him by the collar to throw him off his horse. "Xian, save me." Li Jianheng hit the ground hard, then he knelt there and pleaded, "Xian, Xian. Haven't we always been good friends? Don't leave me here." Under the flash of lightning that cracked across the sky, Xiao Qiye's face was grim. Looking down at him, he ordered callously, "Knock him out and carry him away." Tears and snot streaked across Li Jianheng's face. As he watched Chen Yang approach, he shuffled backwards in fear and waving his hands in the air as he shouted, Zhen is the emperor. How dare you treat Zhen like this?" As he writhed away, Li Jianheng backed into someone, and he turned around to see the hunched and shrunken figure of Emperor Xian, who wrapped a hand around his wrist. He immediately cried, Imperial brother, save me." Emperor Xian's grip tightened, his fingers gouging into Li Jianheng's flesh. Blood sputtered from the emperor's mouth as he rasped, "He who has the power to save you today can kill you tomorrow. Do you understand?" Li Jianheng struggled against the painful grip, but he could not wrangle his arm free no matter what he did. All at once, the rain that pattered down on him turned into something much more viscous. Li Jianheng wiped at it and came away with a handful of blood. He looked up, and from the pitch-dark sky, a human head came plummeting down, landing with a thump. Heavens knew where Li Jianheng found the strength to push and kick his way free of Emperor Xian's grasp. Gasping, he crawled up from the mud, shakily shoved the head away with his foot and wailed at the shadows around him, "I am the emperor. Zhen is the son of heaven. Who's going to kill me?" "Who?" "Your Majesty," someone was calling softly, "Your Majesty." Li Jianheng's eyes snapped open. He stared blindly at the golden canopy above his bed, still murmuring, "Who's trying to kill me, who's trying to kill me?" The Empress Dowager dabbed at Li Jianheng's brow with a handkerchief while leaning over to say, "Jianheng, I am here. It's Imperial Mother." Jianheng. Grief swelled in Li Jianheng. His mother had passed away early in his life, and Emperor Guangcheng had never given him the time of day. In all these years, he had indulged in pleasures, all the music and women, all the hounds and horses he could have wished for, but no one had ever called him Jianheng in his hearing. "Imperial Mother," Li Jianheng's voice caught as he cried out, "Mother." The Empress Dowager turned aside slightly, as though brushing tears away. She said, "We were so afraid for you. You have been unconscious all night. You must tell us if it still hurts anywhere at all." Li Jianheng looked at the Empress Dowager and saw that she was still dressed in the ceremonial robes from the night before. She must have kept vigil here all night. Li Jianheng sat up immediately and could see now that there were threads of silver woven into the hair at her temples, and that her eyes were a little red-rimmed. She looked much more pallid and worn. Warmth suffused him. He wiped at his eyes and took the Empress Dowager's arm. "I've worried, Imperial Mother, but I'm all right now." Liege knelt outside, having kept the same vigil through the night. Hearing voices from inside, he gathered that Li Jianheng had awoken and could not help but felt relieved. Some moments later, palace maidens swept in on soundless feet to assist Li Jianheng in his ablutions. The Empress Dowager took his bowl of medicine in her hand and first tasted it herself, then fed it to Li Jianheng. Li Jianheng took his medicine. He still did not look good, but it was much better than how he was last night. When he put on his boots and walked out, he came upon Liege, who was still on his knees. He felt exceedingly touched. He went to Liege and helped him up, saying, "Elder, Zhen is unharmed." Lianji barely managed to get to his feet and Li Jianheng refused to let him stay any longer. He gently dismissed him and all the other ministers outside who kept vigil along with him, keeping only Kong Qiu, Sen Yu, and Fu Linye, who had spent the night investigating the assassination attempt. "Have you found anything out?" Li Jianheng immediately asked of them. "Minister Kong, go and tell Zhen quickly." Kong Qiu kowtowed and began. "The Ministry of Justice conducted the investigation throughout the night, and have now determined that the assassin eunuch was known as Gui Sheng. He was assigned to the role of poison taster for the feast of 100 officials by a palace maiden of the Imperial Food Service named Fu Ling." "A palace maiden?" Li Jianheng repeated in astonishment, "And why does this palace maiden wish to harm Zhen?" Kong Qiu replied, "The reason is still unknown." Li Jianheng demanded, "But you've been at it the whole night? Haven't you figured it out yet?" Kong Qiu exchanged a glance with the other two men, and was briefly silent before he said, "Your Majesty, Fu Ling was well aware that she could not escape the law, and had already consumed poison to make herself mute. She's now awaiting her punishment." Understanding dawned upon Li Jianheng suddenly. Why would a palace maiden do a thing like that? She must have been afraid of letting something slip from her under heavy torture, so she consumed poison to make herself mute first. Someone must have told her to do that. Kong Qiu answered, "Your Majesty is wise. My colleagues from the Chief Surveillance Bureau and myself shared this belief. Therefore, we conducted a thorough investigation into this woman's background last night. We discovered that she was not alone but had an elderly mother, who lived in a corner alley adjacent to Donglong Avenue. Though her dwelling is small, it was not something that a mere palace maiden could afford on her own. This subject continued investigating and found that indeed she had not purchased this property but that an estate broker had allowed her to have it on credit. There was no one more familiar with Donglong Avenue than Li Jianheng, and he immediately saw the problem here. Since she has no one but herself and her widowed mother, Zhen don't imagine that they owned anything worth the collateral on a house." Kong Qiu said, "Precisely so, Your Majesty. This subject also found this story questionable in many ways, and so we summoned the estate broker for questioning. It was revealed that the estate broker only allowed her to have the property as a courtesy to the Imperial Army." Something lurched in Li Jianheng's chest. He was on tenterhooks as he paused for a few moments before he could ask, "What has this got to do with the Imperial Army?" Kong Qiu said, "It was Yuan Lu, a 6th-rank presiding judge of the Imperial Army, who had made special arrangements with the estate broker. Though Yuan Lu and Fu Ling are not betrothed to each other, there are long-standing rumors of an illicit affair between them." Li Jianheng stood abruptly. Did Viceroy Xiao know about this? Kong Qiu was aware that the Emperor and Xiao Qiye were on close terms but could not quite guess if he meant to protect Xiao Qiye, or had other intentions. He could only answer honestly, according to the Viceroy, he did not. Li Jianheng stood there as several expressions shifted across his face, then he finally said, "The Imperial Army is a large organization. It's understandable that he didn't know. Don't spread this around for the moment. You may leave, but summon Han Chang and Shen Zequan for an imperial audience. Zhen must reward them." *****. Crunching through the hard snow on the ground, Xiao Qiye kicked open the door to the prison. The prison guard within had already received notice well in advance and quickly led Xiao Qiye inside. Fu Ling was imprisoned here. She was only 23 years old. Having already suffered tortured, her hair fell loosely from its knot and she now sat upon the untidy straw thatch, unmoving. Xiao Qiye stepped into the prison cell and Chen Yang took off his cloak off his shoulders. He was so tall and his bearing was so imposing that Fu Ling began to tremble fearfully the moment he entered. Xiao Qiye was, truthfully, a rather good-looking man. He gave off a perplexing feeling of frivolousness and ferocity. As a result, he could come across as either a frivolous young master and a grim deity of death. He could interchange these guises easily, and once the mask was on, even his mannerisms would change to suit it perfectly. Right now, he was only some noble young master who just happened to be passing by this place. Xiao Qiye first swept his eyes over the prison cell. He bent over slightly to look through that narrow window and saw that there were only the high prison walls outside. He lost interest instantly. Withdrawing his gaze, he straightened up again. Then he put his head to one side and looked down at Fu Ling, who was on the floor. Fu Ling pressed against the walls, as she felt as if those eyes were filled with contempt. "Palace maiden of the Imperial Food Service," Xiao Qiye said. Fu Ling did not raise her head and only stared at his boots. Chen Yang brought a chair over for Xiao Qiye to sit on. He looked down at the parting in Fu Ling's hair. With one hand propped on a knee, he said, "Yuan Lu has a wife and concubines, and yet, he still risked the suspension of his authority token to arrange a residence for you. What kind of a beauty are you that you could talk him into throwing his life away? Kman, lift your face up and give us a look." Fu Ling huddled into herself and did not respond to him. Xiao Qiye leaned back. "He's old enough to be your father and you're still willing? A palace maiden isn't like a serving girl. When you're released from your bond, you could still make a good match for some proper lad. Yuan Liu's only a minor 6th rank officer and a military ruffian to boot, with no money or status. Are you too blind or besotted that you'd throw your lot in with him?" There was only silence in the prison cell. "Forget about Yuan Lu for now. How could you possibly have talked Gui Sheng into committing an assassination attempt? You've got no money either, so the instigator could only be someone else. You're a mute now, so they must have decided you'd be the scapegoat from the start. Your master's is a good manipulator to make use of your sort and kick you aside as soon as he's done with you. Well, whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. But since you've implicated the Xiao Xian in this mess, do you think you'll be getting an easy death?" Xiao Qiye smiled and continued, "I don't think so, miss." Chen Yang turned around and nodded at the prison guard behind them. There was a harsh ratting of chains and Yuan Lu, who was filthy all over, was dragged from the darkness. Yuan Lu stumbled on his hands and knees towards Fu Ling and screeched, "You little bitch! How dare you do this to me?" Fu Ling quivered and began to crawl along the wall towards the other end. Yuan Lu grabbed her ankle and cried, "Who am I to you? I treated you so well and you repay me like this." Tears fell freely from Fu Ling's eyes. She kicked at Yuan Lu, making raspy, guttural sounds in her throat. Yuan Lu tugged at her and said, "When your elderly mother was critically ill, I carried her on my back to see a physician. I gave you whatever you wanted. You not only tried to deceive me, you're even dragging my whole family to the gallows with you. You venomous little bitch." There was a clank of chains, and Chen Yang snagged the hysterical Yuan Lu. But his arms stretched futilely forward, and his face twisted as he snarled, "You'll never get away with this. I'll come after you even when I become a ghost." From where he was sitting, Xiao Qiye looked out of the small window again and found that he could see a piece of blue sky about the size of 3 kun outside. There was no snow today, and pale cumulus clouds formed mounds in the sky. He seemed to neither see nor hear the human drama of grudges being played out in front of him. Yuan Lu slumped on the ground and broke down in wretched tears. He then crawled towards Xiao Qiye and kowtowed to him, repeatedly hitting his forehead to the ground as he begged, "Viceroy! Viceroy! Please forgive me this once. I was bewitched and blinded by lust. I'm willing to slave it out for you. I'll work like an ox or a horse to make up for this favor." Xiao Qiye looked over at him. "I'm not the one who has your fate in their hands. Spare me your begging and go plead to her instead. Kowtow to her for the sake of all the young and old people in your family. Consider it as restitution for seeking momentary pleasure and having an affair on the sly." So, Yuan Lu shuffled towards Fu Ling again, and as he kowtowed, he pleaded, "Let me off. Will you please let me off? This has nothing to do with me. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. There are 8 people in my family, and I don't want them all to die because of this." Fu Ling wept but did not look at him. Tears poured down Yuan Liu's face. He was genuinely terrified. He kowtowed until blood streamed out of his forehead. He said, "Fu Ling, one night as husband and wife is worth 100 years of gratitude. Even though we have yet to be husband and wife, the sentiments of these past years are still here. I'm begging you, please don't pin this on me. I'll worship you in our next lives as your son, no, as your grandson. Spare me. I wanted to provide for your elderly mother with that house, how can you?" He was sobbing so hard that he almost choked as he struggled to continue. "How could you take it? How could you threaten to send my whole family to the grave? Don't you have a heart?" Fu Ling was trying to say something with her broken voice. With a pained expression, she returned Yuan Liu's kowtows and her lips opened and closed, trying to mouth the word sorry again and again. Yuan Liu shuffled up to her on his knees, and put his arms around Fu Ling's body. As blood trickled from his brow, he moaned, "I don't want you to kowtow at me. I need you to explain what happened. I don't want to die. Fu Ling, don't do this to me." Xiao Qiye promptly added, "Those who plot regicide will never be given a quick beheading. It's all very well if you want to die, but spare a thought for your poor old mother who would have to go through torture at her age. Don't you know what kind of a place the imperial prison is? If she winds up in the hands of the Jinyi Wei, anything might happen to her, from flaying to dismemberment." Fu Ling threw her head back and wept helplessly. Xiao Qiye said, "Didn't your master tell you about that? I'll make sure that this case doesn't end quickly. Another day of delay is another day of torture, for you, for him, and for your mother. All of you would have to endure it until I'm satisfied. Then we'll see about dying." Fu Ling sobbed hatefully at him. Xiao Qiye only looked at her, unmoved. He continued, "Don't they say that you've got to watch out for the master before you hit a dog? If you're going to put your teeth on this Xiao Xian, then everyone can suffer together. I'll whip you until your skin flays and your flesh is torn, till you'd prefer dying than continue to live. Let's see who will succumb first." Chen Yang, drag her elderly mother up. Chen Yang acknowledged the order and exited the prison door. Fu Ling began suddenly to scream, her tormented throat making sounds like the braying of a desperate beast. She rushed towards Xiao Qiye and fell upon the ground at his feet, then she began to write rapidly with her finger. Xiao Qiye bent down and watched her for a while, then he said, "Give her a brush and some paper, I want this written down in black and white. Asterisk asterisk asterisk." Fu Ling was taken away by Chen Yang to sign off on her confession, leaving only Xiao Qiye and Yuan Lu alone in the prison cell. As Xiao Qiye was leaving, Yuan Lu grabbed his sleeve. Viceroy." Yuan Lu stuttered, "It's all good now, so can I." Xiao Qiye put on his cloak and looked back at Yuan Lu. "When did you begin serving as judge at the judicial office?" Yuan Lu hastily counted on his fingers, and answered, 3 years after you took office, Viceroy." Xiao Qiye said, "So you joined in my time, then?" Yuan Lu nodded frantically. "I'm one of the Viceroy's men." Xiao Qiye had been up the whole night and was a little irritable at that moment. With the hand resting on his sword, he nudged Yuan Liu's grasping fingers aside, and said, "My men don't have this much clout to get Donglong Street's estate brokers to give them credit. All members of Imperial Army must disclose any property they acquire after enlistment. You did not do so. Along with that house, you also own land outside the city. You've done well for yourself as a 6th-rank judge. Don't tell me you don't know who's really been lining your pockets." Both snot and tears gushed from Yuan Liu's face as he began to bawl. He wailed, "I was led astray, I shouldn't have coveted those things. Viceroy! Viceroy! But I never betrayed the Imperial Army." Xiao Qiye tilted his head upwards, stretching his aching neck out a little, and did not look at him again as he said, "How old is your son?" "F4. "I'll raise him for you," Xiao Qiye said expressionlessly. After the trial, you'll put an end to yourself. The cell door closed, and Yuan Lu collapsed in a heap. Xiao Qiye walked through the damp, dark corridors of the prison, listening to the wailing of the man behind him, and received the signed confessions from Chen Yang. He had barely left the prison when Gu Jin came hurrying up towards him. "Second young master," Gu Jin said, "Fu Ling's mother has died." Chen Yang frowned. "Thank heavens you didn't go into the palace with the rest of them, second young master, or Fu Ling would have nothing left to lose, and we would never have got our hands on this set of confessions." This stack of papers, Xiao Qiye flipped through the confessions briefly in the sunlight. Fu Ling didn't even get a glimpse of the other party's face. "We would never implicate anyone on this thing alone," Chen Yang said. "At least we can prove that the imperial army has nothing to do with this. Second young master, shall we head to the palace and present this to His Majesty?" Xiao Qiye shot him a look and asked instead, "Why should we need to prove the imperial army's innocent?" Both Chen Yang and Gu Jin were dumbfounded. Xiao Qiye sneered as he said, "If I'm to be a caged beast, I should act the part of being trapped by others. They're anxious to splash mud on me, but it's not enough. Not only am I going to allow myself to get muddy, but I'm also going to go have a roll in the ditch and make myself as filthy as possible. Let them vilify me so that they can pull their faction to the front and be the accomplished ones pulling the wool over the public. If they can even trample upon the viceroy of the imperial army this easily, then once His Majesty came to his senses, he'll start getting suspicious and ought to be scared. It was only recently that the Hua faction was taken down. Whoever's lining up to be the next top faction is queuing up for the gallows." End chapter. Notes. The imperial army's judge is a different position from the Jin Yiwei's judge. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 49, Cold Glint. As Xiao Qiye was making his way into the palace, Shen Zequan already had an audience with Liege unhung at Mingli Hall and was being conferred the title of a fifth-rank judge of the Jin Yiwei. As such, his authority token was replaced from a gold-plated bronze token embossed with a ZZ amidst patterns of clouds, and with the character guard on one side and Emperor's entourage on the other. Han Cheng only received a few material rewards and was inwardly bitter about it. He knew that he had been used by Shen Zequan as a stepping stone, but he was also aware that Shen Zequan was now in the Emperor's good graces, so he must not let the relationship between them turn sour. Back at the Jin Yiwei office hall, Shen Zequan's comrades all came forth to congratulate him. Shen Zequan responded to them one by one. When Han Cheng saw that the men had more or less dispersed, he said, "This is the first time you're wearing a gold token. There are matters that you're still unsure of, right?" Shen Zequan said politely, "I'll appreciate your Excellency's guidance." Feeling flattered, Han Cheng explained, "This gold token for Jin Yiwei must be worn at the waist when you are on duty, and should not be shown externally when you are on break. Those who are part of the Emperor's entourage usually still serve within the 12 divisions, only you can't behave like you used to before. From now on, you have to be more prudent with your words. Although you have carried out missions in the past, it's different now. For future missions, if it's an arrest warrant, don't be in such a hurry to initiate the arrest. You have to head to the Office of Justice Oversight and let the supervising secretary there affix his signature. If it is a local order, then you will have to leave the Chu capital for said place to investigate the case. Before you leave, you have to make a trip to the Ministry of Justice and Chief Surveillance Bureau to sign off on it." With modesty, Shen Zequan listened to his teachings. When Han Cheng saw that his attitude was respectful and was no different from how he was before his promotion, he could not help but to feel an urge to foster this talent. He continued, "In the past, the Eastern Depot lorded it over us. Each time we see the Eastern Depot eunuchs when we head out, we have to bow down to them and fawn on them. But now the 24 yamen is vacant and unattended, and the Eastern Depot is all but dismissed from office. They are the ones who should bow on seeing us now. There's no need to play nice to the eunuchs. However, there is one thing you must remember, that is, although the Jin Yue take orders from the emperor, we still need to have dealings with the 3 judicial offices. Most of the time, when we do field work in other region, it would be often with the censors from the Chief Surveillance Bureau. Everyone's functions and authority seem detached from one another, but in fact, they still need each other. So, when you are out on missions, you must maintain a good relationship with the officials from the 3 judicial offices. Never lose your temper at them. If you unwittingly leave behind pent-up animosity, you will have a hard time with your future assignments. Shen Zequan already knew these matters by heart, but he listened intently as if this were his first time hearing of them. Lastly, Han Cheng gave him a favor and told him, "You'll need to assemble your own staff. Head to the duty records and choose from the registry book." After thanking him, Shen Zequan stepped out of the door and walked along the corridor to make his way outside. He was not in a rush to head to the duty records room to choose his men. When he walked out of the palace gates, Xiao Qiye was sitting in the horse carriage waiting for him. Shen Zequan paused in his tracks and was about to turn around. Xiao Qiye partially lifted the carriage curtain and said unhurriedly, "Now that you've gotten a promotion and a raise, you wouldn't be too stingy to treat me to a drink, would you?" Shen Zequan saw Ding Tao and Gu Jin standing on either side of Xiao Qiye, glaring at him like tigers watching their prey. So, he scoffed a breath of cold air and answered calmly, "But of course. In fact, I was just looking for you." They went to the same courtyard that Xiao Qiye had used to host both of their shifu for a meal. The inside of the house had been cleared of tables and chairs. Small screens were used to partition out seats on all 4 sides, and there was a simple but exquisite table with curved ends in the middle. It was a very suitable place to have a drink and a chat. It was hot in the room, so the 2 of them both took off their coats. Xiao Qiye sat cross-legged in a casual pose, whereas Shen Zequan sat on his heels in a dignified fashion. Xiao Qiye laughed and said, "When it comes to our bearings, you look more like the gentleman of noble birth. Did Ji Gang Shifu also teach you all these etiquette, too?" This had all been beaten into him by Grand Tutor Qi's ruler. But instead of answering, Shen Zequan asked, "So why were you waiting for me by the palace gates today?" Xiao Qiye looked on as the maidservant served the wine and dishes. He waited until she closed the door before saying, "Weren't you looking for me? You go ahead first. I noticed that you didn't enter the palace to seek an audience with the emperor. You were busy working the entire night. I presumed you were at the torture prison." Shen Zequan took a few sips of tea first to warm his body, then he continued, "Fu Ling was an easy one, wasn't she?" "Indeed." Xiao Qiye poured wine for himself. "She was such a breeze to investigate that she doesn't seem like the kind of person you would use. Not only does she have an elderly mother, but she is also soft-hearted. Someone like her with so many weaknesses to exploit is the easiest to manipulate, but also the most likely to change her tune." Shen Zequan smiled and continued, "You're right. If it were me, I'd surely not use someone like her." But Shen Lanzhou, Xiao Qiye stared at him as he drank, taking a moment to moisten his throat before saying, "Even if you did use this kind of person, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm human, too." Shen Zequan took the wine jar from Xiao Qiye's side. "There are still a few feelings left in there. But you've reserved none of those feelings for me," Xiao Qiye lamented. Shen Zequan poured the wine slowly and said, "Same goes for you. I reached out to you repeatedly." Xiao Qiye said with a genial expression. "But you turned a blind eye to my efforts and even hardened your heart to fight it out with me, no. If giving out a few useless information counts as reaching out," Shen Zequan set down the wine jar before looking at him and continued, "then wouldn't this alliance be too cheap of a deal? So, you turned around and hooked up with Shi Hongxian instead." Xiao Qiye scoffed, "What is he that he's even better than your second young master Xiao? Second young master Xiao was more impressive when he was beating me down." Shen Zequan said, "You can't blame a capable man for taking up the top position. How could I bear to resent you? Xiao Qiye asked through the steam from the pot, are you annoyed that you couldn't trample all over me last night? Not at all. Shen Zequan answered with a smile. Sometimes your gaze is truly very ruthless. Before Shen Zequan could reply, Xiao Qiye continued, but of course, a little ruthlessness gives you flavor. Shen Zequan restrained himself for a moment before retorting, then you have very peculiar tastes. You're not too shabby either. Xiao Qiye made a double entendre. This is the first time I've met someone who likes getting bitten. Returning to the initial point, Shen Zequan diverted the course of conversation. Why were you looking for me? To have a drink. Xiao Qiye downed the wine in his cup. And to have a little chat while we're at it? The estate broker on Donglong Street has a backer. However, we each minded our own businesses, so everyone has lived in harmony up to this point. But now that you've implicated me on this, I'd naturally have to investigate the one backing this up. Shen Zequan scooped a portion of the dish from the pot. Xiao Qiye said, how strange that my investigation only led me to Shi Hongxian. When we were here the last time, you even went out of your way to tell me that the 8 great clans would ally together to deal with me. But then you turned around and trampled on me together with the 8 great clans. After thinking it over for a long time, I still couldn't figure out what your motives were. But as soon as I reversed the course of events, I understood. Shen Zequan ate the fish like a cat would, neatly and gracefully. Without raising his head, he merely mumbled an aha to indicate that he was listening. Xiao Qiye twirled the wine cup on the table and continued, I should have rearranged and put your scheme to trample me before alliance with the 8 great clans. That way, everything would make sense. Your aim was not to bring me down at all. You incited Shi Hongxian and urged him to ally with the other clans, but you also leaked news of it to me. You wanted me to react and lure the other clans away from Shi Hongxian by using the authority of my office over the 8 great training divisions. What do they call it? The art of political maneuvering? Using words alone to sow discord within and to sabotage the potential alliance of the 8 great clans is but a trivial issue. Leaving bad blood between them from the subsequent fallout is the real prelude to the great task that you truly intend to undertake. Shen Zequan glanced at him and asked, did you come up with this just from finding out that Shi Hongxian was one of the backers of the estate broker on Donglong Street? Some clues are like spider webs and horse tracks. Xiao Qiye said. You can't wipe them clean. When Shi Guan was held in the imperial prison, Shi Hongxian sold out the former's life in exchange for an official position. Now that I think of it, that should have been your suggestion, too. Otherwise, Shi Hongxian wouldn't have heed your advice so readily. Shen Zequan wiped his fingers with a handkerchief and thought for a moment before saying, the one who can make him listen to advice readily isn't me. I initially thought that you were in a hurry to be promoted so that it'd be easier for you to investigate the case of Zongbo troops' defeat. Xiao Qiye poured wine once more and continued, who knew your appetite would be so great? What good would it do you to pit the 8 great clans against each other? You are well aware that the Chu capital is surrounded by the 8 great cities and that they are there far longer than the Li clan. You've seen Hua Saiqian's insurrection at the hunting grounds and how big of a case it was, yet the Empress Dowager has still emerged unscathed. How can you harbor the delusion of using the power of one man to break them up and oust them from power? Pry apart this mist of the Chu capital and take a good look underneath. You will see that they have already been standing tall for several hundred years with their roots deeply entrenched underground. Shen Zequan's chopsticks came to a complete stop. When he sat upright, it felt as though he was about to launch into light intellectual conversations. He was not angry. In fact, he was very composed as he said, I'll only ask you one question. Xiao Qiye paused for a moment before saying, go ahead. Shen Zequan spoke, the Hua clan and the Xiao clan had been keeping each other in check all this while. After the Nanling hunting ground incident, the Hua clan appeared to go in decline while the Xiao clan apparently gained the upper hand. But, is that really the case? Xiao Qiye gripped his wine cup tightly. It was already dusk outside, but the lamps in the room were still not lit. Shen Zequin's silhouette as he sat against the window appeared frail. He said, "Very soon you will come to the realization that it's not just the Hua clan you are up against. Perhaps at the beginning, you could still console yourself that they only want the 8 great training divisions. But you only have to think of the 6 prefectures of Zongbo to understand that what they want is far more than this. The case of the defeat of Zongbo is not yet closed." Concealed in the dark, Xiao Qiye stayed silent for a moment. Then he continued, "And yet you're so sure that they are the ones who did it. This is a bad debt." Shen Zequin said, "We've gone through the case regarding the defeat of Zongbo again and again with the intent to ascertain whose fault it was. But the fact is, this was never a matter that a single person could commit. Furthermore, there was one point in the defeat of Zongbo that no one could quite figure out even up to this date." Xiao Qiye stated, "Why? Exactly. Why?" Shen Zequin affirmed his words and continued, "When the Bianchi clan invaded, everyone's morale and spirit took a beating. The tens of thousands of lives lost in Zongbo was only the immediate problem. Next to it would come the loss of taxes from the 6 prefectures of Zongbo for years to come. Then there's the restoration of its population, the redistribution of the farmlands, and the rebuilding of the annihilated cities and towns. The state treasury could not bear this burden, and so Zongbo became a bottomless national debt. The most difficult part was the restructuring of the garrison troops. Without sufficient manpower, Zongbo will be defeated once more. How much longer can the reinforcements from Liege and Qidong last? This directly concerns the safety of the Chu capital." Did all of these questions not pass through anyone's minds before the Zongbo's troops' defeat, or was it done precisely because these were expected? Perhaps the 8 great clans were not the main instigators, but without their power and influence, this sort of thing could not have been done either. They are always involved each time there's political unrest in the Great Zhou. 25 years ago, the reign of the late Emperor Guangcheng was the turning point of the Hua clan's rise to power. To fortify her position, the Empress Dowager killed the crown prince, a virtuous talent who observed propriety. But 80 years ago, during Emperor Yong'an's time, the clan who held sway over the imperial court was the Yao clan, a prestigious clan that produced 3 renowned talents. Even the Grand Secretariat was known as the Hall of Yao at that time. Then, there was the Shi clan who became the key to Great Zhou's granaries when Juexi opened up Yanji harbor 100 years ago. Making use of this opportunity, they also laid claim to the lagoon salt mine on the west coast of the Sea of Su and became the wealthiest clan in the empire. Even the imperial Li family has to borrow funds from them for the matrimony of their nobles. None of these happened because of personal grudges. Rather, they were taking turns to be at the helm while emperors came and went. Since the beginning, none of these clans have truly been on the decline. Poor households do not produce noble sons. Very few of the Great Zhou's significant officials who could influence the political situation of the imperial court were born from a poor family. How many years did it take for a Qi Huilian to surface? And how many years did it take for a Hai Lianji to appear? They are but a quick dash of ink in the pages of history. Even if one of them scrapes through, they are a fleeting presence and would hastily be brushed off as a mere mention in history. If we must mention someone who is able to stand tall amidst the iron web of the 8 great clans, then this man is someone you are most familiar with. Shen Zequin watched Xiao Qiye as he enunciated each word. The Prince of Liege had a humble beginning and was born at the foot of the Hanjian Mountains. At the age of 15, he was drafted into the army at the Loxia Pass, where he was promoted to the Loxia Pass garrison by age 20. The garrison troops was defeated at the foot of the Hanjian Mountains when he was 23. He went on to build the horse range of Loxia at 26 and established the cavalry of Loxia at 28. When he was 30, he battled against the Bianchi Hanshi tribe once more. He crossed the Hanjian Mountains by 32 and set foot all over the eastern Hanjian mountain range by 35. From here onwards, the Loxia cavalry was disbanded and took on the name of Liege Armored Cavalry. No longer part of the Loxia Pass garrison, he was thrice bestowed and conferred the title of the vassal prince of Liege of the Great Zhou. The scale of Liege's great commandery was then determined, and Great Zhou thus occupied the entire range of the Hanjian Mountains. The war between the Xiao clan and the 8 great clans is not only a power struggle but also a battle between nobility and the common people. The man who had broken through the barrier to reach the peak was Xiao Fangxiu. From a very long time ago, Yu and the 8 great clans were already at the stage of irreconcilable antagonism. Shenzequan lowered his gaze slightly and arranged the bowl and chopsticks in front of him neatly. He said, "To ally with me, you have to bring forth a sincerity like mine at the very least, and not just a word or two about the imperial army's accounts. Those are worthless to me." The small screen panels isolated the sound of wind from the two of them. In the darkness, 2 men sat opposite each other. The window lit up slightly, and the indistinct glow of snow gleamed upon the 2 men's side profiles, reflecting the chills of the pitch-black night. Placed in opposition with one another, both Longli blade and Yang Shan Shui remained sheathed, and yet the room still flashed with cold glints from the cutting edges of both blades. End chapter. Note: ZZ is a lion-like mythological creature with a single horn and a spiky back, was a symbol of justice and law and the insignia of the censors who sought out corruption and maintained discipline among other court officials.